got 152 yards. Should be just a nice, comfortable 9-iron for him. They're going to go nuts when he hits this thing.
That's dirt.
Yo, welcome in, golf fans. This is the Preferred Lines podcast and live stream. My name is Joe Idoni. It is a pleasure to have you. We are ready. We hit a winner. Let's talk Amex. Let's talk TGL. I got you covered here from the Preferred Lines HQ. Please note, as always, this podcast contains my opinions, leans, reckless picks, not suitable for everyone. Viewer discretion over the next hour. Highly advised. I've got a guest here alongside to join me this week, shared the experience with me last week at TGL. Super excited to have him. Once again, I got to mention this show is proudly brought to the airwaves of YouTube and Twitter by the good folks over at Rotoballer PGA. Spencer Aguiar has his Wizard out now, which is all the data you'll ever need and much more. This show comes to you free of charge for the next 40 or so weeks of the PGA Tour season. On their behalf. So thank you to them. If anyone is here and would like to join, I have some content pieces exclusive to them up each and every week. The promo code is LINES. That gets you 10% off any sub. Yo, Wesley, it's good to see you. Ted, it's good to see you. I'm fired up to see the guests that I'm going to bring on right now. This week, I'm happily joined by a good friend of mine, Mr. Everything You Need to Know About the Golf Course himself, sat directly to my right-hand side in the TGL Media Center last week, on Tuesday. Welcome back to Preferred Lines. From the lines, it's John Haslbauer. How are you? He's got the hammer. You see the hammer.
We're hammered. I saw the hammer back there. I had to bring the hammer out.
Hammer
We're good.
Down,
we're back.
Baby. Listen. Only for you and for Nick Taylor. We've got some McAllen here tonight. I'm going to pour one up. John, it has been far too long since I have hit a long shot in the world of betting professional golf. Cheers to you. Cheers to all of you out there. Thank you for being there for a part of that journey. It felt good. How did you feel? What did Nick Taylor make you feel yesterday?
Oh, a lot of things. I wasn't fortunate enough to be on that ticket with you, but Nick Taylor, fun fact is, as long as we've been, I think you may have been tracking your picks a year or two longer than I have. Nick Taylor remains the only guy that I have hit multiple times, which is kind of crazy. I hit him at Waste Management and Canadian Open. Not Kisner. Nobody else.
Pick.
For Nick Taylor to cross the finish line twice, for me, he's got a special place in my heart. Anytime I don't have to be on him to be happy for him. He's got this weird thing where he's like kind of must watch TV when you get Nick Taylor down the stretch. And it's so interesting because he is exactly the type of player that like Mike Weir and the Canada team needed at the President's Cup. And he did everything he could to take himself off the team after Waste Management last year. He went into such a lull, and you just root for the guy because it's so fun to watch him in crunch time.
Yeah. So, it was very fun. Listen, there have been so many that I've lost that I felt like I should have won. It was good to finally win one that I probably should have lost. And I wanted to kind of like harp on this point that I've always made, which is so different about win or lose outright betting. It's different than DFS. Like, I know people get enamored with approach play and off the tee, and it's important, but I've always been so much on like, you have to be really good around the greens and be a good chipper to actually win. And when you look at who's won here, when you look at how Siwoo Kim did it, it was with a chip in and like tons of scrambling opportunities. There are going to be big moments when you have to get up and down, and Nick Taylor did that. And just look at like, John, just look at like the strokes gained, like advantage versus disadvantage, like on that playoff hole. Both guys hit the same tee shot. Nico hit it better off the tee. Like, he's in the advantage spot in both of those situations. Then comes the approach. He's in a huge advantage spot in both situations, right? He hit better shots. all the odds are shifted to Nico Echevarria, who played fantastic, by the way, also. But it always comes down to chipping and around the green game because Nick Taylor gets up and down. He makes a clutch putt. He forces that pressure back on him. And in so many circumstances, the difference between winning and losing comes down to scrambling for birdie, scrambling for par. Like Wesley said here, that nippy pitch from 50 yards to like check it up close to the hole was the best shot we saw in the playoff. And you're right. He kind of has this now clutch ability where it's a guy that there's so many you can't trust in contention. And Nick Taylor is not there often, but you got a Nick Taylor ticket on Sunday afternoon and you feel like he's going to give you some blood.
Yeah, you're right. It's a great point with short game because it comes into play a lot and people overlook this on par fives where like you got to make a birdie and not everybody's going to hit the green from 250 out. So it's a must birdie hole and you have to get up and down in those situations. That's why I always rate around the green higher at Kapalua than most courses because there's so many holes that are par fives that you have to get up and down from the tabletops, drivable fours where you can get up and down. You're scrambling, but for birdie, but it's still important and you need the short game or you're just going to fall behind. So he put that on full display there. I think 18 is, I tweeted this, was one of my favorite playoff holes, not finishing holes per se, because like you think about like 18 at Sawgrass, that's a great finishing hole, but it's not a great playoff hole because most people probably are parring it. But this one, there's so much variance on 18 at Sony, and I love that it really forces a draw off the tee, which is kind of uncomfortable to most of these guys. We've seen it in playoffs in the past where they take these like crazy angles just to hit a high fade over the tree, and it's like just hit the draw. You're
over the tee marker,
just hit the draw. And it was really cool to see Taylor and Nico pull off the first shot, and then put themselves in different situations around the green. But it's just a really fun watch. Great tournament, underrated tournament, the Sony.
A super underrated tournament. Like always a good finish. Always like, despite being 7,000 yards and like no tricks really, like there's no gimmicks about it. It always like challenges pros, and like those up and downs are really, really tough. It is hard to hold 17, like downwind the way they were. Players were hitting the green. It was rolling over the back. It was hard to get up and down on 18. I watched it all day. In fact, the two guys at the end, JJ Spawn and Steven Yeager, couldn't do it. So like the fact that Nick Taylor did it twice, I think was ultimately the difference. Really cool course. We'll talk a little bit. I want to get your insights on the courses this week at the Amex. But before we get into this week, we both had the privilege to attend the very first TGL match, a historic night in Palm Beach. It was so cool, John, to like meet you and hang out a little bit. The experience felt so right for me in terms of like past experiences that I've had in the media center where I won't say I felt unwelcome, but it felt a little awkward to be a gambling guy in the room. They were super welcoming in comparison. They seemed like we were happy to be there. It was just so much of a casual, professional, but enjoyable experience to me. In comparison, we got to talk about the night did not get off to the best start for us as we got on the shuttle, guys. We get on the shuttle to take you from the media lot to the TGL, and our shuttle bus driver, I shit you not, me and John and one other guy on the bus, clips what we think was maybe a stop sign, shatters out the window to the entire shuttle bus, turns around and looks at us like, did something just happen? We just wanted to get there. We didn't want him to stop, so we kind of made it seem like not a big deal. But strange way to start the night, trying to get to SoFi with a windowless shuttle bus. But maybe it was a sign for the night, but things turned around once we got in the building.
Yeah, I think broken glass is good luck in some cultures. I thought he made a sharp turn and he tipped over a bucket of ice, which is like the optimist in me. I was like, that was either a shattered window or somebody tipped a bucket over. Hopefully it was the bucket. Yeah. He was very nonchalant about somebody that just
listen, that had to be a bad night for that guy. Like when he realized what he did, that was not a good situation. He's either getting fired or he's got a hefty bill.
Yeah, and then there was no pizza yet in the media tent when we got there.
But they brought the pizza straight to us, which was cool. They gave us gifts. They presented us gifts. We had little rules sheets. We had little earpieces. It was cool, man. I think the star of the night from an event standpoint for me was the pace. I mean, the pace is the shit, how fast it moves. It has the ability to hold your attention and is like this. I talked to Andy a little bit about it's like feels like this hybrid experience between like what we know as golf and like gamifying golf, like built for like virtual reality video game type golf, and this hybrid of like real players hitting quote unquote real shots. But it really worked. In talking to some people, I talked to a lot of people this week, like at the club. What did you think about it? It seemed like a generation beyond us, older than us, my dad's age, weren't too keen on it. But a lot of those guys who had like 14 to 18-year-old sons were like, they don't even like golf. Like they loved it. Like they watched it. They were enamored by it because it has that video game fast paced feel to it. I know that oftentimes like Twitter can be a dark, brutal place, but I think most people seem to like we talked about, like we either want people to like it or hate it, right? Either one is pretty good for them, and it seemed to do that well. But I was kind of surprised about the positivity from the people who watched it at home.
Yeah, I think how do you turn intrigue into interest? Week 1, there was going to be a lot of eyeballs on it, and whether you stick there, they were very strategic in putting Tiger in week 2 because they understand it's a spectacle. Week 1, people will watch him on the broadcast and then watch him play in week 2, and you've got 2 weeks to really grab everybody. Not off to the best start with it being an uncompetitive round 1 that's out of their control. But I think there was still enough airspace there to really talk about the players and everything. You know, the talking point ever since Liv came into the mix is like, quote unquote, grow the game. How do you do it? And everybody's like, I don't know. We got to grow the game somehow. And nobody has actual ideas. This, what you just talked about like the 14-year-olds liking it, the older generation, maybe not liking it as much. It's not for the older generation. That, viewership is established on the PGA Tour. That generation is good on golf. The attention spans are not what they used to be. And you need, as you said, 2-hour rounds of golf for people to really get into it. And nowadays you can go to a simulator down the street in most communities. You can go to an X Golf, a 5-iron or something and hit and play, hopefully they can have these courses that they play in TGL accessible at home. And then here you are, you're playing on the same level playing field as the best players in the world.
Yeah. And here's what his like, for the last, I'll say 5 years, been the answer from executives in pro golf, from the Match to the PGA Tour to Live to all these influencers have come in and said, what makes golf compelling? It's the money that they play for, right? Let's make these purses incredible. Let's make them play for 4 million, 5 million, 10 million. Let's do a match for 10 million in crypto. People will watch because money makes it compelling. What was so cool about this, John? How much did they make on Tuesday night? We don't know. Nobody knows. Did the winning team win any money at all? Nobody knows. What are they playing? What's the championship worth? If your team wins the championship, do you split it 4 ways? Are they on appearance fees? Are they on 3-year deals? Do they have a stake in the league? There was no talk about money because somebody finally realized that's not why people watch golf, is because they play for huge sums of money. And that was really refreshing to me to sort of witness firsthand. And like, I kind of wanted to, there was so much good about the night. It's a question that I ultimately do want to know because I'm interested in how much they're making. I'm interested in it, but I love the fact that they're not publicizing it. They're not even talking about it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you just look at the Ryder Cup, one of the most intriguing events of the year. They're not playing for money either. So clearly money's not the answer. I think money's like the last minute, desperation. How else are we going to get people? Well, I don't know. Maybe we'll pay them more. Like that's how I approach like gift giving. Like, oh no, it's the week of Christmas and I forgot to get my wife a nice gift. I'll just get her something expensive, like that's your last ditch. Like, all right, I don't know. Let's just throw money at it. But to really cultivate the engagement and stuff, you have to really think through it, listen to what the people want and then give them that. So I think, again, prime time on ESPN, that's a new audience, new people coming into golf. I really think this can be like a star maker platform where you start to get these like origin stories of, okay, we didn't really know Ludwig on the PGA Tour. Now I've seen him. He's amazing at golf. He's hitting these, he looks like a robot out there. He's hitting a 40-foot putt. He's getting excited. He's high-fiving. He's got charisma. I'm going to look out for this guy when he plays now, at least in the majors. So you get a little bit of backstory. I feel like it's the part 2 to Full Swing where that was sort of exposing non-golf viewers to the personalities. And now it's like, okay, here's a little personality and how they actually compete against each other.
What's the number one thing you would change if you could, after being there, after seeing the reaction, after witnessing it firsthand? If you could change one thing, what would it be?
So I tweeted this idea of the handicap play, which I'm gonna keep trying to get that to be a thing because I think it makes so much sense. You have so much white space and wet clay here to do whatever you want with this league. You should be able to blowout proof the league. You should be able to add rules where if a team gets up by too much, you can pull the handicap and say, okay, for this next hole, you guys have to play lefty. You guys have to play with hockey clubs. You guys have to play with a rolled back ball from like 1960. We're going to play around with the simulator, and every time you hit a draw, it actually fades. Like there's endless possibilities. Somebody had a comment of like, we're going to bring in a random guy out of the crowd and he's going to play in one of the 4 slots on this hole. Yeah. Like there's boundless opportunities here to make it fun, to make it so you don't know what's going to happen next matchup. They could reveal this before in the week of, like, our handicap this week is going to be, you know, you're playing blindfolded, whatever it is. And it's like, oh, okay, I would like to see that. And then you're kind of rooting for a team to get up big so you can see this happen. I think that would get the younger generation really excited to do something like just kind of like silly like that.
Yeah.
And then that way you're not getting a blowout. You're making sure it's competitive. If they go on a big run, you stop them a little bit. I would love to see something like that, and just the general approach of like, let's not take this league too serious. Let's have fun with it. There's so much opportunity to just add fun to the game. And I guess the last thing I would say on that is like, listening to the players in the interviews afterwards, I think a lot of the questions were, this was a competition, but how do you make it more entertaining? And it just seemed like being an entertainer isn't natural to golfers. They just know how to compete. And that's something that's going to get better over time. They're going to learn how to do it. But it is pretty clear that, like, I don't know how many athletes I would say are naturally entertainers too. Maybe like a UFC fighter is very easy for them to put on a promotion, not as natural to the golfer. So it's going to be interesting to see how that gets better over the course of the year.
Yeah, we need Ludwig cutting like Stone Cold Steve Austin promos. I think my thing, like, I would just get rid of the intermission. I don't think that was needed. I feel like that killed the energy in the arena pretty bad. I don't feel like it was necessary. Like, nobody was tired. What was it for? They didn't do anything at halftime, like a halftime show, so it was unnecessary. So here's where I kind of struggle, and this is why I kind of like what you said about introducing like kind of so-called like silly things to make the matches more entertaining. So they do want to lean into gambling, right? And whereas people that do content want to try to find like, where's an edge? Like, can we scout the holes? Can we figure out some data feeds? Can we see who's hitting it the furthest? Can we figure out who this sets up for to make like an advantage play and give an educated pick to the people who follow us for that reason? I no longer think this has to be that. This can just be something fun on Tuesday nights or Monday nights that we just bet anyways. It's like when you got your group text of 15 guys, and you know when 7 p.m. rolls around, that one guy on the text is going to be like, who we on tonight, Jupiter or LA? And everyone chimes in with an opinion, right or wrong, gut feel. Nobody's got any information, but everyone wants to say, you know what I mean? So it fires up those group threads. It fires up those Discord channels. It's just exciting and entertaining for people to watch, and they'll gamble on it just to have fun and not necessarily because they have an edge. And I think that introducing new ideas for that can like kind of help facilitate some of that, but it does struggle like if they want to have people that are, you know, betting LAGC huge, and now all of a sudden they've got to play with hockey sticks, right? So I think they've got to kind of find that balance, and I think they will. The players talked how much fun it was, and it was nice because, like I mentioned, there was no mention of money. It wasn't a real competitive match. Shane Lowry, we heard him say it was the most fun 2 hours he's ever had playing golf. I mean, the guy won the Open in Ireland not 2 years ago. The other notes that I had was the actual aura of Ludwig is insane in person. Like, he captivates everyone. It was funny being in the media center. So you were in the one group out, but I think it was Kyle Porter or somebody posted, and everyone kind of saw it at the same time. Like, my wife's super into TGL because of Ludwig. Everyone felt that way. So that was one of the other notes that I had. I was like, when I had that shot of that video of just like Tiger just like staring him down, just like the rest of us, like just wants to see this guy walk and swing a club and smile. It felt very much like this guy has a ton of potential, and this league could take him to a new place as sort of a social character and increase his brand and whatever he really wants to do with it. I also like the shot clock thing. I loved the pace of it. I loved it. Both teams, Xander, Fitzpatrick, and Ricky were asked about it. Like, what rule would they potentially bring over? And they all said shot clock. The other team said the same thing. Like, we're really fast players. We love the shot clock. The players seem to be so, I would say, on board with it. Now, not everyone is going to be. There will be your Cantlays and some of the guys that maybe don't love it. But I just think it's time. And I think if we realized anything from there, faster golf, while you still need time to breathe and understand the context of the situations, if we can increase some of the speed and find a happy medium between watching Harry Hall stall Steven Yeager and JJ Spawn out for 6 minutes while he aim points a putt on 18 versus what we saw at TGL, like let's find a happy medium and find a rule that's enforceable and can be fairly put into play, and let's do it.
Yeah. One other thing on TGL, I'm curious your thoughts. There was a news release today that the TGL like ownership is getting more interest from other NFL owners in other markets and potentially expanding it to other markets. I think that's really interesting because if you're just in Palm Beach, you attract it. It's harder to get there for the players and work it into their schedule and get everybody the weeks that you want. If you're going from the West Coast swing predominantly in January, February, before the Florida swing gets there, it's much easier. So it would be really interesting if they had more of like a West Coast base and an East Coast base, and whether that's Scottsdale or San Diego or something, having there be like a second hub, and then like the more I think about it, and we were there in the space, there is a lot you could do with that space. It's unlike any other event space I've been in. But you could turn that into a bar. You could open that up and put 1,000 people in there for NFL
so fun.
wildcard weekend and have the biggest screen they've ever seen. Serve drinks
God.
from the concessions. You got a giant parking lot. Like there's a lot you could do actually, and it doesn't have to be just hitting balls into these screens.
Yeah. So it was interesting because they were able, being on Palm Beach State campus, I know they were able to skirt some of the inspections and stuff like that. And there's tax benefits to being on a college campus where they were able to build it and have it up and running faster. It is repeatable though. Look, you need 100 yards, you need 1,500 seats, and you could do this anywhere. And what's interesting, and this is why I think there were some criticisms of how ESPN covered it, it's going to get a lot better. This was their first ever time. It's going to get better. And what you can do in a fixed environment like that, like think about trying to cover the Sony, and like everyone's always like harps on the coverage, but it has to be difficult. You've got to somehow get the trucks from wherever they were the week before, set up on Monday, get all the wires on the whole course, film all 18 holes, do 12 hours of shooting video throughout the day from the AM tee times to PM tee times. This is just a fixed 100-yard environment where you can get these high-tech cameras. You can mic up the players. You can repeat it. You can get these angles. And they had the drones, and they had like the Monday Night Football things that was on like the strings above zipping around. They had the one thing that looked like Wally, a robot that was roaming around the green at all point. But you're able to control the environment, and it's such a smaller space where I think that you can produce really compelling television, and that's where this thing is going to ultimately in 2 years be won or lost.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. We have more of a biased stake having them welcome us in there and seeing it firsthand. I think a lot more people would share our sentiments if they were able to get up close and personal with it. So I do hope it I'm rooting for the best for this this season. It's going to be amazing watching Tiger. I hope that it continues the momentum from thereafter. I hope to get back down there maybe for the championship or playoffs or something in March. If not, definitely next season. But yeah, and I'll be tuning in tomorrow. The big underdogs,
$1,000,
your boys.
$1,000 to get in, dude.
$1,000,
$900 on StubHub plus their fees. Tickets are going for tomorrow night on the secondhand market. So there's not a ton of seats, but there's an appetite for it for sure. I can't tell you how many people just being here in the last week have been like, "Can you get me tickets?" And I'm like, "Nope." All right, let's shift gears to this week. Fun talking about TGL. Was an awesome experience with you. Mr. Course Preview guy, how difficult is a week where you've got 3 of them to do? Is it like randomize things a bit to you? Does it make it harder to predict, or is there some sort of angle and similarity in these 3 courses that you can, you know, build a stat model around?
Yeah, thankfully there is similarity. I think they're not super similar in that the stadium course I think is drastically different from the other 2. The 2 that don't have shot link, La Quinta and Nicholas, are basically, I think, the same course. There's not much water. There's no rough. All the greens are similar because it's a pro-am. Whenever you have a pro-am and they're slower, they don't want people putting off the green. The pin placements tend to be a little bit more accessible the first 3 days, just to keep it as short as it can be, which is a 6-hour round. So second shot course, you can't really get into trouble if you're not playing the stadium course. Off the tee, you're going to hit a ton of greens in regulation that have very accessible pins and a lot of birdie looks. But it is a misnomer, I think, to call this like the purest of birdie fest, because the stadium course actually has some teeth. The scoring average there is like less than 2 under par. Like, it's quote unquote easy, but it's not nearly to the extent of easy as the other 2 courses. And that's the only, of the 3 that we get the shot link data from. And there you see a lot of comps from the positional guys, the ones who play well, like Sawgrass and TPC Southwind and Heritage. So that's sort of in a push comes to shove situation when I'm looking through players. I want the guys who are the better approach players, but as far as like position off the tee, it's your quintessential second shot course and make a bunch of birdies.
Yeah, La Quinta, I think the easiest. Most of the first round leaders have been from that side in recent years. I think if you're playing Showdown or something that lumps all the first round leaders together, it's something to pay attention to. You mentioned the stadium course is the hardest. I agree. I think it got even harder. So they redid all the greens at the stadium course. So they're going to have that additional firmness as they haven't settled in yet. So not only is it the hardest course, the most water, there's a lot of water down the left-hand side of those holes. But I think distance in an environment like that becomes a little more important, because the further you hit it, the higher lofted club you can hit into the green, more likely to hold that green with a wedge than you are an 8 or a 9 iron. So I think greens in regulation will go down a little bit this year from what we're used to based on the firmness that I expect. So I think that that's going to play the hardest. Par 5 scoring, super important. You've really got to take advantage of those on all of these courses. I looked at some tee to green stuff on short courses with a lot of water, die courses. Let me just bring up now the rabbit hole stat model that I ran, John. So I'm going to put this up at the bottom. If you haven't used the rabbit hole yet, promo code TOURPICS, 25% off your annual sub there. Get on board. I think it's the best. So I got Justin Thomas at the very top of my model this week. Patrick Cantlay, Sung J M, Tony Finau, Tom Kim. Those are my top 5. And then starts to get a little random and a little squirrely. Keith Mitchell, Kitayama, Doug Gim, Siwoo Kim, Eric Cole, Ben Griffin. That sort of rounds it out. But of course, I always have that around the green play factored in. I looked a lot about distance from the edge of the fairway, 100 to 150 yards, par 5 birdie or better percentage. And then I started to look at like unique filters like this: strokes gained tee to green on Pete Dye, very short average courses with a lot of water, desert style courses, short, under 7,200 yard courses. It allows you to sort of filter in all those sort of unique things that I think are helpful. So those are sort of the top guys in my stat. Anything to add there from a course standpoint that you're looking for this week when you're trying to figure out who to bet?
I mean, from a betting perspective, we've seen some of the most random outrights to come out of play here. Obviously, Nick Dunlap winning as an amateur. I think a lot of books didn't even post him. The ones who did had him way over. Honestly, he might have been like 1,000 to 1. I don't remember if you know where he closed at, but nobody knew who this guy was.
400 to 1, I think, Dunlap. I think there were bigger numbers than that, like you said.
Yeah, crazy. And Hudson Swafford won here at 200 to 1. A couple other guys into the triple digits. So you get random winners here. you also get John Rahm winning here a couple years ago. So
Yeah.
Whenever you get a putting contest, which is essentially what this is, most of the board is live. They're playing the same course that amateurs are playing, that random people are playing, right? So it's going to be the fact that it is a pro-am makes it a pure birdie fest more so than the course itself, just again, because the greens have to be slower and the pins have to be more accessible and the rough has to be lower. So all of those things make it definitely a little bit more volatile. The last thing I'll say about this course, there's a par 5 somewhere on the stadium course. I forget which one it is. It's the most tilting hole on the PGA Tour. They put a cart path in the middle of the fairway in the exact landing area where everybody hits their drives. And it's like this hold your breath if you're going to skip off the cart path into the water behind it, or if you miss it. And
This
people
is
are
where
hitting.
Xander had the albatross, right? Because didn't he hit the cart path was at the very end of it?
Yes. And I had Cameron Young here 2 years ago and he was like 400 to 1 and he was in contention and he made like a quad because he skipped it into the water and then he forgot to drop it was like lift clean place or wasn't, and he picked up his ball when it shouldn't have, and he made like a snowman on that hole, and I'm like, just forget this hole. So that's a little quirk to it, but yeah, you need birdie makers here. Long story short, and I guess the very last thing I would say is because it's a pro-am, it's a slow round, it's different. And there's guys who just play well at this event because they have the tolerance for that. And it's kind of the type of event where if you've never played well here before, I'm kind of crossing you off because it's a different kind of atmosphere and it's just not for everybody.
Let's look at some guys. Let's bet the board. Top of the board. Now that we've got a withdrawal from world number 2, Xander Schauffele, maybe the TGL schedule is just so strenuous that he needed a little breather here. Xander, not sharp on Tuesday night, by the way. So maybe, who knows? Maybe he had to go see a swing coach, but however you slice it, not here this week. That makes Justin Thomas your favorite to win the Amex. 12 to 1 is the current price. Sung JM 14 to 1. Sam Burns 16. Patrick Cantlay at 18 to 1. Tony Finau 25 to 1. Tom Kim at 30 to 1. John, that is the top of the board. The top 7 names under 30 to 1. Do you have any bets?
Yeah. So my approach to Amex is usually pick one of the top 5 and then like a dozen 100 to 1 bombs. Because that's basically, if you look at the outright winners over the last 10 years, it's boom or bust. It's a favorite or it's a complete random guy. And so I love Patrick Cantlay this week. I haven't seen a ton of people on him. He is a different guy at this event, and his preceding form hasn't really mattered. He just really likes this collection of holes. You talk about pace of play. This is his bread and butter. He loves a 6-hour round. Nobody wants a 6-hour round better than Patrick Cantlay. So he's in his comfort zone here. Nobody's rushing him around this course. Underrated, guy, he made the President's Cup team. Justin Thomas didn't. Patrick Cantlay had an underratedly very solid year last year, even though he didn't win. And they have basically the same course history. So JT last 2 or 3 weeks has been better than Cantlay, but if you look over the last 10 rounds or so, Cantlay's been way better. So I think from a DFS perspective and definitely the betting board, Cantlay's my guy. I got him at 20 right before Xander. That was my first bet. I placed the rest of my bets later this evening, but when I first saw the board, I was like, oh, Cantlay 20, definitely.
Cantlay, before I give my first bet, make sure to subscribe, go over to the Preferred Lines YouTube channel. If you're streaming this right now on Twitter, sub to the channel, tell a friend, that all that good stuff helps. Before the Xander withdrew, I snagged a 15 to 1 on Justin Thomas. You threw a little 30% boost in there to get that boy up. Listen, we've heard, I think everyone's been super bullish on him coming into the year. Dude's playing great golf. He's ready. Talked to people who've practiced with them and have echoed the very same sentiments that he's playing awesome right now. Approach play much better. Sort of a mixed bag around the green, but when it's there, I think that he's got some of the top tier hands and chipping ability when it goes right for him. all the filters that I mentioned before that I looked at on the rabbit hole, desert golf, I have him second. Very good historically on Pete Dye courses. When you look at places like, the Players, obviously, that he won a few years ago, really, really ups his baseline on short courses. Good on courses with a ton of water. When you look at the Players, when you look at Honda that he's won, number one in the field in proximity from 100 to 150 yards. I've talked a lot about his commitment to improving some ball speed stuff and getting a little bit longer. I think that helps him on a course like this to come in with wedges. First in tee to green on short golf courses in the field for me. Justin Thomas, I think people were very excited to bet him at the Century to start the season and didn't play great. I think that, I don't know that I'd still be there at 12-1, but I felt like 15-1 or above was a good price on JT this week that I took, and I feel pretty good about now that we got Xander out.
Yeah, and especially now Xander's out, you've got great CLV. I was on JT at both the Zozo and the Hero, where he like it was his, and then somebody else scorched the earth around him, and honestly, the same thing with Colin at the Century the week after that, where it's like this guy can't play any better, and the guy who won just was untouchable that week. So JT definitely close. I'm a big believer in him this year. I think he's already should be on the Ryder Cup team. I've seen enough. He's good. He's gonna have a good year. Wouldn't be surprised if this was his week.
Little mid-range action. We start with Kurt Kitayama and Wyndham Clark at 33-1. Clark, super sharp at TGL. Don't know if that's a little narrative there you want to play it to, but looked pretty good last week. Davis Thompson went down the stretch with John Rahm here a few years ago where he kind of burst onto the seams. Grayserman's been hot at 40-1. Siwoo has won here before, loves a little Pete Dye action himself at 40-1. Cameron Young, 45. Harry Hall playing great at 45-1. Denny McCarthy is actually withdrawn. Eric Cole is 50-1. Your defending champion, Nick Dunlap, 50. Fishburne, Griffin, Harmon at 55. Poston at 55. Echeverria went right down to the wire at 55. Willie Z at 55-1. There's a lot of names in that range, and I'm drawn to a number of them, John. Who do you like?
Yeah, I bet 3 guys in this range.
Let him rip.
I actually feel the least comfortable about Zalatoris of the 3 bets I bet in this range, but I did bet Zal because now the narrative's going to be he's bulked up, he's a new guy, he's been training, and I look, my perception of 2025 Will Zalatoris is he's been on the mend and he's rusty and he's got to shake it off. But I look back on his schedule and he's actually fairly active. He was great in the playoffs, just didn't make it to the Tour Championship, but a couple of top 5s to close his year. Played in the Zozo, played in December at the BMW, and then looked really good, at least to start at the Century. Was almost first round leader there. So
same with the Hero, I think, first round leader there.
Yeah, so he's definitely on the rise. I've already seen futures on him for the Masters. I'm not there yet. And like you said, if there's not really a penalty here for missing the fairway on 2 of these courses, then maybe a bulked up Zalatoris is a cheat code and he'll do even better here than he did in the past. One of the more skilled ball strikers in this field. We know that putting metrics, at least forget the eye test, but the putting metrics look pretty good. So you don't normally think Zalatoris in a putting contest, but this one's not getting to 30. You could win this at 25. Not that that makes really a difference in a putting contest, but I just think on the pedigree, 55 is a pretty good number. And then I also bet Griffin and Cole, kind of 2 forms of the same player to me. Forget off the tee, put them on a second shot course. They're going to fill up birdies. I think this is the moment for Ben Griffin. If he's going to win on one course, I would pick this one for him. Just forget the penalty for wayward shots off the tee. You don't have to be long. Win it with your approach and putting and just stack birdies. That's his game. And Cole's pretty much the same player.
Yep, in on Zal with you. I can't make a ton of great statistical takes on why he's going to be great here. Just ultimately believe, like you mentioned, he's a top 3 ball striker in the field, maybe on the PGA Tour when things are going right. So really kind of thrives on demanding courses, tee to green. mostly harder courses than this, but there are some elements to the stadium course that they get a little gnarly and really challenge players. Like you mentioned, the form I think is better than some people realize because he's had some rounds there. He's shown the ability. He just hasn't put it together for all 4 days. So I think that's why we can still catch a decent number like 55 to 1 at this price. Just felt right. And the other one for me now is Brian Harman. Top 10 in the model I ran, probably due to a lot of the short course and peat dye filters. Was great at Sawgrass last year when I walked around and followed him, was able to sweat a triple-digit ticket on him there. Third and an eighth place here in the last 3 years. So, clearly gets along with this place. One of the more accurate guys in the field, sixth in distance from the edge of the fairways over the last 50 rounds. So I trust his ability to hopefully stay out of the water for the most part, and a guy who improves his baseline on shorter tracks. And it hasn't. You kind of hit on this earlier, and putting isn't necessarily a prerequisite here like it's gotten that notion for. Even the year that Rahm won, he lost strokes putting. Only one guy in the top 10 gained more than a stroke and a half putting that week. So you don't need it, but it's helpful to have, right? It's always helpful to have when you have a guy like Harman who can get really hot. And if it does turn into someone you need someone to start banging home 15-foot putts, feel pretty good about him in comparison to some others. Lingered just enough at the Sony where I can feel, spin my own weird brain waves to feel optimistic that, but also didn't completely like suppress his betting price this week. Like if he finished like solo fourth or something.
Yeah. Slow play God.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
The sliders are all the way up on Harman this week.
But it's not going to feel rushed. We got execs.
This is his comfort zone. Forget the shot clock.
Zone,
TGL is in Palm Beach this week. It's not in La Quinta.
All right, let's rip a couple bombs and then we'll get out of here. 75 to 1. I'll just kind of open it up to you, John. You had Jason Day, Sepp Straka, Tom Hoagie off like back-to-back first-round leaders. Nick Taylor, your champion last week. Cam Davis is there. Just give me a name or two that, we've seen some huge prices on winning outright picks here, including last year. Anyone down the board here that you feel good about a little bet on?
Yeah, I would say in this range, if we're just trying to chase last week's narrative, which was good course history, hadn't quite won it yet, form is suspect, but always plays well at this event and is Canadian, then it's Adam Hadwin. So I feel like, they're the same exact type of player. Hadwin shot a 59 here, lost to Phil, I think, in a playoff years ago.
He's got a 59 here?
Yeah, I think I'm almost positive. Yeah, or 60.
Sounds right.
This is the course. This is the setup to do with that on. So he's gone very low here. He plays very well in the desert. Form's okay. Had a real chance to win the Memorial. Like his game is there. Due for a win, I think. And better days ahead for Hadwin. So I went there just based purely on course history. I have some like nasty bombs, like very deep into the long shot. So I'll give you my longest long shot. 750 to 1.
Oh my God.
Former major champion. Coming off back-to-back top 10s the last 2 times he came here over the last 3 years. Had a top 5 last year.
Is it Danny Willett?
Right below him.
Frankie?
Francesco Molinari, California.
Okay.
Lives in California. Right. I don't know why this event speaks to him, but he has back-to-back top 10s here, another T12 year before that. Game doesn't look completely lost, and course history seems to be having a moment with Nick Taylor breaking the schneid last week. So for 750, we may have some generational wealth on our hands if Francesco can knock down the door with these top 10s.
Okay, that's deep, John. I'm feeling pretty bullish off a Nick Taylor win, but I'm not going to go quite that deep. But here's 2 that I got for you before I put out the final card on Wednesday. Took 75 to 1 on the septic tank, Sepp Straka. Burly boys are out there in the desert ready to play. Wasn't exactly a model popper for me, probably like you'd expect from Sepp Straka, but kind of really like his ball striking ability, like a guy who can just get really hot. Like when you look at Hadwin and Adam Long and some of the guys you see, like they just got to have a really good week. He's underrated with his wedges. Inside of 150 yards, he's actually really sharp. And on short courses that are demanding off the tee because of a lot of water in play, he's been solid. Won the Honda, second at the St. Jude, third at the Heritage, which has Pete Dye ties, top 5 at the Memorial last year, which has a ton of water and trouble and is pretty demanding. And then, of course, won in a shootout and a birdie fest at the John Deere Classic. Good putter that can go really well. I like that he played both Hawaii events. Historically, that's been a positive element, I think, on the whole for guys competing in the Amex versus guys making their first start. Hasn't played this event in a few years, but did have a T4 back in 2020. And then this one, I shouldn't love, but I love 150 to 1 on Matt Kuchar.
Yeah.
Pete Dye specialist, but let's get it like it is. Heritage crushes at the Heritage. One former players champion. He like been really good at the Dell Match play, which was at Austin Country Club, which was a kind of quirky Pete Dye course, like the stadium course. Has won the Honda before on courses with a lot of water, was really good at TPC Twin Cities last year on courses with a lot of water. And it's because he's one of the more accurate guys in the field. While he's not going to get an advantage with distance, you hope that he's not going to miss any fairways, which he does. He does quite a bit. He's not sort of intimidated and kind of actually raises his standard on Pete Dye courses. One of, the bunker play is really tough on this course. I think of Matt Kuchar, like if there's one attribute I could say throughout his career he's always excelled at, he's awesome out of bunkers. 11th in strokes gained approach over the last 36 rounds, coming off a 21st last week at the Sony. I think it's a good time. I think he makes a good top 20 bet. I'm sure that he will be probably more popular than he should in DFS, but I think at 150, like, let's take a chance on Cooch.
Yeah, he left a little sour taste in my mouth. I bet him and Lucas Glover top 20 last week. They both finished T21. So didn't love that from Cooch, but he's playing well. And for all the reasons you mentioned is why I liked him last week. He has great course history here. Sep too, like that. It's kind of what got me on Zalatoris is I actually really like TPC Southwind as a comp here, where they finished in that playoff together at the St. Jude.
Yeah.
Just like visually, a lot of these holes feel similar to stadium course specifically. Yes. A lot of water holes, a lot more penal rough there. But I think, like you said, they did try to grow out the rough at least a little bit, as much as they can for Pro-Am at stadium course. So I think I've been looking there for comps too.
All right, dude. I know your full card will be out later this week over at the Lines. Anything else that you got planned, or you think you're going to make it to a second TGL match this season? Are we going to get you back to Florida? It was great to see you, but what else you got going on this week?
Yeah, we'll see. I would love to get back down to TGL. I'm definitely would love to do like just a Florida trip in general. So I'll let you know if I do end up down there by March while we're still in season. If not, maybe later in the spring. But we'll definitely be watching from home, tweeting from home from my couch, and interested to see the broadcast because we actually kind of missed a little bit of that. So I am looking forward to that. And yeah, content wise, it's a couple more articles. I'll have my sleepers up. The Amex sleeper article is one of my favorite ones to write because you literally can't go wrong. And like I'm betting Francesco Molinari 750 to 1. I don't feel like I'm burning my money. I feel like that's actually not dead yet. So that would be fun. This is a week I encourage my friends, if you don't bet golf week to week, like just bet everyone I bet over 101, put $5 on it, and you'll have a sweat somewhere.
Somebody will give you a sweat.
Exactly. So this actually should be a pretty fun week. And yeah, other than that, I just built my simulator in my backyard. I just
can we get any TGL holes on there? Can you start picking your plunder, or what are we doing?
I have heard that there's a GS Pro integration. I just bought a computer last night so that I can actually get GS Pro in there. And my goal in my content journey is to do more like virtual flyovers of the hole that week. If we're playing, what do we have? Torrey Pines next week. Do like either the signature hole, play it out, and kind of speak to key stats for the week, or you've done your lunchtime long shots. Maybe I do some sort of a couple prop bets to put in while I play a hole. I do want to do more of the content that's not just me staring at my computer and speaking for 20 minutes. So we're going to work on that, but I think this will be a good solution. I'm looking forward to that, and just generally having a simulator in my backyard now. So more to come on there.
Very cool, dude. Well, always the best just to talk to you and catch up and talk golf. Would love to have you down here each and every week. So whenever you make it, make sure to give me a shout. At PGA Tout on Twitter. Like I mentioned, one of the original course preview guys. You can always trust his content. He's always super sharp. He puts the work in. Awesome to have you on the show, man. Thanks a lot. We'll catch up soon. All right.
Yes, sir. Good luck going for back-to-back this week.
Thanks, brother. Later. All right, gang. Appreciate you guys for checking out the show this week. Hope that you enjoyed it. Hopefully you got a little bit of insight of what our experience is like with TGL. If you have any ideas for me, I'd love to hear it, because I'm not even really sure what type of content I want to do or resonates with TGL. I don't think Rotoballer is quite sure either. Like, if you'd like to see betting preview articles, if you'd like to see behind the scenes stuff, if you want to see more like player interviews, if I'm able to get those, if you want data, if you want to just know like some cool quirky takeaways from the live being there each and every week, I would love to know that kind of stuff so that I can kind of cater my journey around it toward what is most palatable for my audience. So hope to learn more, hope to continue to go to those events. Thank you guys so much for checking out the show again this week. Best of luck at the Amex as we go for 2 in a row. Market movers up Wednesday. Full card will be out as for free as always on Twitter this Wednesday. My name is Joe Idoni. Thank you for checking out Preferred Lines. I'll catch you guys next time. Peace.